Hey everybody, hi. In my previous videos, you have seen me talk about my favorite sports teams, and but I'm a huge film fan as well. So here in this video, I want to talk about my favorite films. Everybody has a list of their own, you know, like where they have their like favorite movie list. So I have one, and on my list, the first film has to be The Shawshank Redemption. The film was released in 1994, and that was such a great year in Hollywood because you think about so many great films released that year. Forrest Gump, The Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, Jurassic Park, also I think. So that was a great year for Hollywood. But The Shawshank Redemption, I mean, in terms of story and everything, it was such an iconic film. It's such a great film. The film was based on uh, Stephen King's, you know, book named Rita Hayworth, Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption. That's the name of the book, and the story deals with this friendship between the character called Red, played by Morgan Freeman, who is also the narrator of the story. And then Tim Robbins played Andy Dufresne. It's such a great film. The film is almost 3 hour long, but then in the end, when you see the two friends reunite, after prison, it feels so it feels so good, like it feels like a good circle, like a circle of life, and it feels it gives such a satisfaction, when you see those two friends reunite. So yeah, I mean, it's a great film, and that's like number one on my list. And then secondly, I have to talk about um, Nayak, a film by Satyajit Ray. That film was released in 1966. You know, so the hero, which is the literal translation of Nayak. I mean the title. You know, so that film was loosely based on the real life matinee idol Uttam Kumar, and Kumar played the main protagonist in the film named Arindam Mukherjee. Was based on the real life of Uttam Kumar, and it was a great film. And I think for every aspiring film actor out there, Nayak Nayak is still very relevant to this day. And yeah, I love that film. And then talking about movies by Satyajit Ray, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. Um, Shonar Killa is one of my favorite films. It's based on, the adventures of Feluda, and a character created by Mr. Ray himself, who is also a renowned writer, you know, so, you know, a very popular character, Feluda, detective sleuth, you know, like who is also inspired by, the iconic Sherlock Holmes. So, anyway, but the story of Shonar Kella is not just the biggest, I mean, attraction. In fact, if you see the movie, it's also about the journey. It's also about this romanticism that's there in the film, with you know you know those scenes, in the desert with camels, and the characters are so entertaining in that film, and the music, the theme music in that film, the theme music of Feluda, it's so iconic. So yeah, Shonar Kella is one of my favorite films, and in fact, all the Feluda films, you know, Satyajit Ray made also another Feluda film called Joy Baba Felunath, you know, which is the literal translation of the elephant god. So yeah, I mean, I love Feluda films. And then um, talking about greatest films ever made, I mean, the Godfather trilogy, especially the first Godfather, with Marlon Brando as Vito Corleone, and obviously Al Pacino as Michael Corleone. Like, great film, like absolute classic. And also the theme of Godfather is so iconic. And Francis Ford Coppola, I mean, such a one of the greatest filmmakers again of all time, Francis Ford Coppola. You know, so yeah, I mean, I love the Godfather trilogy, but the first film is so iconic, so iconic. I just love that the first film, but also the second film with Robert De Niro as Vito Corleone. That's very iconic as well. So yeah, and then okay, let's come back to India, and now let's talk about a film which is um, I mean much younger. Let's just call it a much younger film to the those films I just named, like Three Idiots, that film released in 2006 or 7, I think, maybe 2008, maybe 6 or 7. But anyway, that so Three Idiots was directed by Rajkumar Hirani, who I consider the greatest, modern day filmmakers in India. So Mr. Hirani directed this film based on the book Five Point Someone by Chetan Bhagat. So I mean, this film, the story is also this is a story that also deals with friendship, the theme of friendship. So there's three guys, Raju, Rancho, Farhan, and this film has to be the most favorite film of our generation. Like when we were in school, like this film motivated us to follow our dreams, and like deny the norms of that time. Like even today, it's still the norm that you have to, like, the traditional professions that you should follow, that you should try to get a job, where you try to get a job is are like engineering, doctor, lawyers. These are the traditional you know professions. But Three Idiots motivated us or enlightened us to think that you should follow your dreams, you should follow your dream, you should do you should get into a job that you're passionate about, you know so like Farhan. So the character Farhan, he's passionate about wildlife, or he was passionate about wildlife photography, but he was a pretty good student, so his father asked him to complete do engineering. But then Rancho helped Farhan understand that he should you know get a job in wildlife photography and not engineering, because it's just not his thing. Engineering is just not his thing. He should not do it, because he will become a very bad engineer if he continues to you know you know complete engineering. So he should follow his passion and become a wildlife photographer. So anyways, it's such a great film, and the music is so good, and the whole film is so iconic for our generation. And even today, I think film can even today's generation, even today's kids generation can love that film. So I highly recommend Three Idiots. And almost everybody has seen that film, and but people who have not seen the film, I really recommend that please do watch Three Idiots. It's one of the best films ever made, um, especially in India, one of the best films. So then there are so many more films, like the Spider-Man trilogy by Sam Raimi, with Tobey Maguire. People can argue, like, say, Andrew Garfield, was the amazing Spider-Man. Tom Holland, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Spider-Man. But we know, like, we grew up watching Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, and he's truly the OG. He's truly the best Spider-Man out there, the greatest Spider-Man of all time. Absolutely. So yeah, I love Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. And then talking about trilogy, let's get back to DC and the Dark Knight trilogy, by Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan is definitely one of the greatest filmmakers of the modern generation. Uh, like his film Oppenheimer won the Oscar, and Oppenheimer is such an iconic, like the real Oppenheimer is such an iconic character, and the film is based on a book called American Prometheus, and it's such a great film, Oppenheimer. And my favorite actor, Robert Downey Jr., won the Oscar for the supporting actor category, and he absolutely deserved it. I mean, such an unbelievable performance. Everybody, the whole cast, especially Cillian Murphy, you know, playing the titular role, he was unbelievable. You know, and again, like talking about Robert Downey Jr. and Cillian Murphy, they are so iconic because of their uh, other characters. Like Robert Downey Jr. will be like he will always be remembered as Iron Man, and then Cillian Murphy will always be remembered as Thomas Shelby. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I love Oppenheimer, and the whole cast did a great job. And but the Dark Knight trilogy, I think, will like absolutely made Christopher Nolan one of the greatest filmmakers of the modern times. Um, so yeah, I mean, talking about modern times, let's get back to comedy. You know, and one of the greatest comedies ever made. Comedy films. It has Modern Times by Charlie Chaplin. Like absolutely iconic film. I love Charlie Chaplin films. The Circus, The Modern Times, and The Great Dictator. There's so many great films by Charlie Chaplin. So yeah, I mean, I love comedy as well. I love superhero films. I love comedy. Talking about horror films, I love The Conjuring. I love The Conjuring, The Exorcist. You know, and then there are so many great horror films out there. I love them. I love that genre. But The Conjuring has to be the best, according to me. And then there's so many great sci-fi films, like the Martian, directed by Ridley Scott, with Matt Damon, Jessica Chastain, and it's such a great film. I love that film. And then talking about, let's get back to let's talk about serial killer films. Psychological thrillers. Like Seven, by directed by David Fincher. Then there were other films like great films like The Silence of the Lamb, with Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster. Great film, and Anthony Hopkins played this iconic character called Hannibal Lecter, who is a like iconic cannibal, if I can just say that. I mean, in movie history, one of the most iconic characters who is a cannibal, Hannibal Lecter. And Anthony Hopkins played such an icon. It was such an unbelievable performance by Anthony Hopkins, and he won the Oscar for it, I guess, and absolutely deserved it. So yeah, I mean, I'm really into comedy, uh, and all like comedy, horror, sci-fi, and let's talk about action films. And when you talk about action films, I think the first name that comes to my mind is Sylvester Stallone. And I mean, Sylvester Stallone is such an iconic actor because he played these two iconic characters. Imagine the same actor who played Rocky Balboa. That same actor played Rambo, John Rambo. I mean, unbelievable. Those two franchises, like absolute best. Sylvester Stallone, and then his arch rival was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's such an iconic actor also. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and such an inspiring life story of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Both Stallone and Schwarzenegger had such an iconic life, inspiring story. They're absolutely they're absolute heroes, in real life, Stallone and Schwarzenegger. Then in their generation, I think um, iconic actor Jean-Claude Van Damme was another great action film hero. But then I think for me, the best action films ever made has to be Die Hard. With Bruce Willis. I mean, obviously, Bruce Willis. Without Bruce Willis, you cannot imagine Die Hard, right? Absolutely no, absolutely. Bruce Willis, Die Hard. It's such synonymous. So yeah, Die Hard, changed everything. You know, talking about like a one common man dealing with a hostage situation. Such an iconic story, iconic. It all started Die Hard. It all started with Die Hard. I think it was released in 1988, and then everybody, it was common phrase that we believe in John McClane. John McClane, and such an iconic character. Yeah. So, there's so many great films out there. Tom Cruise is one of my favorite actors. And his movies like Top Gun, obviously, Top Gun, A Few Good Men, and sometimes people only relate or may only talk about Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible franchise, which is a great franchise. I love that franchise, but Tom Cruise has also made such dramatic roles, dramatic movies as well. Like I just mentioned, A Few Good Men, right? Then there was Jerry Maguire. I think Tom Cruise was nominated for the Academy Awards for his performance in Jerry Maguire, and then obviously, born on 4th of July. And sometimes we will forget that Tom Cruise played such an iconic character in Rain Man. He played the role of the brother, you know and alongside Dustin Hoffman. Rain Man is such an iconic film. So yeah, such great films out there. So yeah, talking about great films, I mean I think I talked about the Godfather trilogy, right? So Francis Ford Coppola, great. So obviously Satyajit Ray movies, and talking about great films, Throne of Blood by Akira Kurosawa. If you're a student of English literature, and if you love William Shakespeare, you must know that the greatest film adaptation of Macbeth was will have to be was and will have to be Throne of Blood by Akira Kurosawa. It was great. And then talking about Kurosawa, I mean Toshiro Mifune was his most good actor, I guess. Almost all his movies had Toshiro Mifune playing the main protagonist. Just like Chatterjee was the most favorite actor who played the main protagonist in almost most of the Satyajit Ray movies. The main protagonist, or at least he was there, in most of Satyajit Ray movies. Shomit Chatterjee. Similarly, Toshiro Mifune was there in most of Kurosawa's films. So yeah, talking about greatest film directors, Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, like great filmmakers. They're great films. I love them. You talk about Raging Bull. Robert De Niro, just unbelievable. And then talk about Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Before that, he made. Reservoir Dogs was such an iconic film. Then obviously Pulp Fiction. Then the Kill Bill volume. You know that series with Uma Thurman. And then obviously Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Django. Great films by Tarantino. Who doesn't? If you love action films and maybe a little violent films as well, you'd love Tarantino films. Tarantino has his own of uniqueness. Everybody needs to have that. Great filmmakers has that flair, own individualness. And so I absolutely love, you know I love Scorsese. When you talk about the biggest, I mean, sci-fi, or like those films, sci-fi action, and like films on animals, like we talk about action thrillers, like Steven Spielberg's, Jurassic Park, and before that he made, Jaws, which film, Jaws. I mean, so yeah, I think I covered most of the genres. And so I so my favorite films. So I think I have missed out on a few, maybe on a lot of films that I love and I still love watching. When you talk about David Fincher, you talk about his great films like The Social Network, Seven, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Fight Club. So yeah, David Fincher is one of my favorite filmmakers. I love his films. So yeah, I mean, so I love so many films. You talk about, I mean, the biggest action film or the biggest martial art film. I think it has to be Enter the Dragon. And Bruce Lee has always been such a, like Bruce Lee, is such an icon, is such a legend, you know. And I grew up watching Bruce Lee films, and I absolutely love him and his films. Enter the Dragon, The Big Boss, Return of the Dragon, which is also called The Way of the Dragon, I think. So yeah, I mean, I love Bruce Lee, and then obviously Jackie Chan, iconic, action hero, but Jackie Chan, difference between Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee is that, Jackie Chan brought action comedy, you know, so, and he did so successfully, such an iconic, like his films, his that style of action comedy is something that a lot of actors after him in different countries, started copying, that genre, action comedy. you know you make comedy with, stunts. And I think even before Jackie Chan, I mean, you talk about old movies, there was also, about like a great showman like Charlie Chaplin. People tend to forget that he was a he was one of the greatest showmen of all time. I mean, he could do so many things. So yeah, I mean, I love Charlie Chaplin. Talking about comedy films, I mean, Rowan Atkinson is one of my favorite actors. I mean, Mr. Bean, like, made my childhood awesome. I love Mr. Bean. And then Rowan Atkinson played another funny character, which was a parody of James Bond, called Johnny English. And that film also, I mean, that character also has three films. So yeah, Johnny English Reborn and Johnny English Strikes Again, like a great film franchise. I love Ron Atkinson, absolutely love him. Um, so yeah, I mean, talking about great performances, I'm wearing this T-shirt by, you can see, like, Heath Ledger, you know, who I really think, the greatest, like, whose performance, Heath Ledger as the Joker, I think was the greatest acting performance of all. Talk about Daniel Day-Lewis, the greatest actor of all time, but even Daniel Day-Lewis, praised, Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker. It was really, really iconic. Heath Ledger won the Oscar posthumously, but and even after a lot of, and after many years, Joaquin Phoenix won Oscar, for playing Joker. But I think we can agree that Heath Ledger's performance was the most iconic Joker of all time. So yeah, I think I covered it all. You know, and let me know in the comment section your favorite films. We can discuss. So um, so yeah, let's go. Ciao, film lovers.